If the only way to save your daughter is to do the very same thing that she hated you for the most, would you still do it? In Revel's End Arctic prison, a bard named Edgin Darvis and a barbarian named Holga Kilgore are about to face their trial for pardon. At this time, Edgin is confident that they will be finally released, reasoning that one of the councils that go by the name of Jarnathan will surely help them. However, during the trial, Edgin notices that Jarnathan is running late, so he tries to stall a bit, but the council orders him to begin his statement. With that, Edgin starts by declaring that he wasn't always a thief. A few years ago, he served as a member of the Harpers, an order of peacekeepers who vowed not to wish something in return for his service. However, the vow didn't really do much for his wife, Zia, and baby daughter, Kira. Worse, the disciples of the Red Wizard of Thay that Edgin arrested attacked their home one night. When Edgin arrived, his wife was already on the verge of death, but she still managed to save Kira. And because Zia is wounded by a Red Wizard's blade, no amount of medicine or magic could save her from certain death. Due to the sudden death of his wife, Edgin left the Harpers. Since then, he started taking care of Kira, but things weren't going well for them. That was when he met Holga, who at the time was brokenhearted after her husband, who she left her tribe for, broke up with her. She helped him take care of Kira, but life was difficult for the poor, so they resorted to stealing. But Edgin insists to the panel that they have a code that they would only steal from the rich and that they would not hurt anyone. And while growing up, Kira was with them all along as she wore a pendant that let her be invincible at will. Eventually, the three-man team of Edgin, Kira, and Holga became a five-man team after an amateur sorcerer named Simon Almar and a rogue con man named Forge Fitzwilliam joined their group. Together, they formed a not-so-formidable but good band of thieves. Until one day, a mysterious wizard named Sofina hired them to raid Corin's Keep, a Harper stronghold that contained different relics that were confiscated from the Iguldurs. At first, Edgin didn't want to risk it, but Forge managed to convince him as he told him about the Tablet of Reawakening that was said to have the ability to resurrect the dead. However, Edgin didn't tell his daughter about the tablet just yet, not wanting to get her hopes high until he actually brought Zia back. Kira, on the other hand, didn't want them to go and said that they already have everything they need, but he promised that that heist would be their last. Arriving at Corin's Keep, Sofina finally got what she truly wanted, the Horn of Beckoning Death. However, when Edgin got the tablet, it triggered an alarm that alerted the Harpers guarding the place. Sofina then used her magic against them, stunning Edgin as he told her that they don't hurt anyone. But more Harpers arrived and she suddenly unleashed a spell called Time Stop that caught Holga. Edgin ordered Simon to counter it, but Sofina was too powerful, so he ran away instead. Left with no other options, Edgin also tried to run, but he got caught by the Time Stop as well. Yet, before getting completely consumed by the spell, he tossed the tablet to Forge and told him to keep Kira safe. And that is the story of how Edgin ended up in Revel's End Arctic prison. At this moment, he admits to the council that his worst crime is neither of the thefts he committed, but the fact that he robbed her daughter of a good father. In that sense, he promises the council that if they approve their pardon, he will do everything to atone for that crime. Shortly, the council has finally decided, but Edgin stops them from announcing it, pleading to wait for Jarnathan. Just then, the man of the hour, who turns out to be a birdman, finally arrives. Seeing him, Edgin hugs him in happiness, which confuses Jarnathan. And to everyone's surprise, he signals Holga to attack the guards and they push the birdman out of the window, forcing him to fly them out of the vicinity of the prison. This leaves the council dumbfounded as they reveal that they actually granted Edgin's and Holga's pardons. The two then travel back to their town, only to find out that Forge and Kira have been gone for quite some time. But he doesn't leave the house empty-handed as he still gets his loot back. Thinking about where they can find the two, Holga suggests that she should pay her ex-husband, Marleman, a visit while they're still looking for Forge and Kira. Hearing this, Edgin advises her not to put herself in that situation again. Shortly, they find a flyer with Forge's face on it that writes that he's now the Lord of Neverwinter. With that, they immediately head to the city-state of Neverwinter where Edgin finally sees Kira after 2 years of being imprisoned. But to his surprise, she runs to hug Holga first. He then gives her the mittens that he made when he was in prison, but Kira is visibly unimpressed. On their way to meet Forge, Edgin apologizes to Kira for how things turned out and asks why she looks mad at him. In turn, Kira says that she's indeed mad at him for acting like what happened that day wasn't his fault. Edgin gets confused, but they're interrupted when Forge shows up and greets them. During their conversation, Forge states that he thought they were going to serve longer in prison, but the two lie and say that they were released early due to their good behavior. In turn, Edgin asks how Forge became the Lord of Neverwinter, to which he answers that he won the position after the Lord of Neverember got ill. Also, he had great help from their old companion, Sofina, who's now his top advisor. Seeing her, Edgin and Holga are shocked, stating that she was the reason they got caught. On the contrary, Forge points out that Sofina was the reason that not all of them were caught. Despite not being happy to see her, Edgin just puts everything behind him and thinks of what's important to him the most. With that, he asks Forge to give him back the tablet and Kira so they can finally leave. But to his surprise, Kira gets disappointed and says that he only came back for the Tablet of Riches and not for her, which greatly confuses Edgin and Holga. As it turns out, Forge poisoned Kira's mind by telling her that her father left and got caught because he wanted to get richer by getting the tablet. Edgin tries to explain that the tablet is the Tablet of Reawakening and that he went for it to bring her mother back. However, she doesn't believe a word he said, especially since Forge is great at making Edgin look like a liar. To make matters worse, Forge fuels her anger by showing their wanted poster for breaking out of prison. When Kira walks out, Edgin and Holga try to attack him, but Sofina just traps them on the floor. Forge then mocks them for not learning anything from before, making the two realize that he and Sofina purposely made them caught back then. In turn, he just mocks them for trusting a con man like him and orders the head of the guards to take the two back to prison to collect their bounty. However, when Forge is gone, Sofina orders the guard to kill Edgin and Holga instead. Yet, this allows them to escape after Holga defeats most of the guards and takes the axe of their leader, with a single assist coming from Edgin. They flee Neverwinter for the time being and try to come up with a plan to rescue Kira. Eventually, they decide to build a team to break into the castle during the High Sun Games, take Kira out, and get the tablet from the vault so Kira will know that they're telling the truth. With that, Edgin and Holga head first to Tribord to pick up Simon, who's now working at a magic show while secretly stealing from his audience. However, he gets busted by the townsfolk as he becomes distracted upon seeing the two once again. Luckily, Edgin and Holga manage to take him away from the angry mob. They then fill him in with what they want to do, but Simon says that Sofina will just overpower them. He also tells them about the rumor that the Lord of Neverember actually fell ill because of her to let Forge rise into power. Due to that, what they're planning is nearly impossible, especially since they don't know what magic Sofina is using to protect the vault. In turn, Edgin points out that they can look for someone who can go in and out undetected like a druid. Luckily, Simon knows one because a druid had rejected him before. Then, they meet the druid named Doric, who rescues an elf for being executed just because she spoke ill of Forge. Doric is a member of the Emerald Enclave who was born to human parents, but they abandoned her, so she spent most of her time living among the wood elves. Because of that, she has an innate distrust of humans that is then fueled when Forge started destroying their homes. As expected, she's not fond of seeing Edgin and Holga because they're humans, but she still agrees to join their mission because they have Forge as their common enemy. Sometime later, back in the castle, Sofina is then revealed to be a red wizard of Thay who's working for Shaz-Tam, a powerful lich who has the power of necromancy. As it turns out, she is just using Forge to complete her mission in the name of Shaz-Tam. Although he is completely aware of this, he couldn't care less as long as he's getting rich. Shortly, Forge shows up and says that their guests are ready to see the vault. Afterward, he proudly takes them into the castle's vault of treasure, which, according to Sofina, is protected by the arcane seal of Mordenkainen. Just then, Forge and the guests start talking about the High Sun Games when she suddenly orders them to shut up. As it turns out, she feels the presence of Doric, who's shape-shifted into a fly. Fortunately, Doric comes back safely to the group despite the harsh chase she got from Sofina and the castle guards. Because of that, Edgin finally knows that Sofina is a red wizard, making him more desperate to get Kira back. However, Simon points out that since the vault is protected by Mordenkainen, it's basically impenetrable. The only way to open it is if he's as powerful as Sofina, which is not, or if they have the Helmet of Disjunction, a helmet that disables all the nearby enchantments. And as luck would have it for them, Holga states that her ancestors got a hold of it during the war at Evermoors about a century ago. However, Simon tells Edgin that he cannot attune to it because he's weak. Yet, Edgin tells him not to tell it to the ladies first, not until he tries it. Due to that, the four travel to Evermoors and use a token to temporarily bring back the dead to life to ask them questions. After questioning several corpses, they eventually find out that the helm is given to a man named Sankiandar, a paladin from Thay. Hearing this, Edgin says that if a Thayan got the helmet, it's done for, and that they need to come up with a new plan now. But to his surprise, Holga, Simon, and Doric all have heard about Xenk and attest that he's a good man. At this time, Holga talks some sense out of him and reminds him that he's doing this for his family. With that, they immediately travel to Mornbrun's shield where Xenk is said to be currently working with Harpers. Upon talking to him, Xenk doesn't show interest in helping them at first. But when Simon reveals that they need it to fight the Lord of Neverwinter and the Red Wizard with him, Xenk changes his mind, taking the group to a Harper sanctuary, revealing that he knows that Edgin was a Harper. According to him, if Forge is allied with a Red Wizard, then their goals are beyond political. At this time, Xenk shares with them that over a century ago, Shastan, who turned out to be one of the 8 rulers of Thay, used the Horn of Beckoning Death during a gathering and turned many Thayans into his undead slaves, including Xenk's parents. This then allowed him to conquer the entire nation of Thay. Knowing Shastan and his grief for power, Xenk believes that he will not stop until the whole of Faerun is under his command, hence why Sofina allied with Forge. Then, all of a sudden, the stake of their mission just gets heavier, so they convince him to lend them some help. In turn, Xenk asks what will happen to the ill-gotten wealth that they will be stealing from Forge. Thinking about it, Edgin unwillingly states that they will distribute them to the people of Neverwinter. Because of that, Xenk finally decides to help Edgin and the others to get the Helmet of Disjunction in the Underdark, the home of evil beings. With the help of a hither-thither staff, they open 2 portals to safely get across a river of lava. However, as soon as they get the helmet, the assassins sent by Sofina show up. Although Xenk manages to defeat them, they just get back up as the dead cannot be killed again. Due to that, the group just decides to run, but they get cornered when a dragon suddenly bursts into the cave. It then attacks everyone, eating the Thayan assassins and chasing after Edgin and the others. For a moment, it nearly gets Edgin eaten, but Xenk stabs the dragon and saves him. Together, they catch up with the rest, but they just reach a dead end. Just then, the dragon tries to squeeze to get to them, causing the rocks above them to start breaking apart for the water to spill in. At this time, Edgin realizes that it's salt water, so he orders Simon to spark the dragon's breath as they go underwater, allowing them to finally get out of the Underdark through the sea. After a while, Xenk bids his goodbye to the group, wishing them luck in their quest. Just then, he and Edgin shake hands as the latter realizes that not all Thayans are bad people. Meanwhile, Simon tries the Helmet of Disjunction for the first time and is shocked to see his great-great-grandfather, the legendary Elminster Aumar. But instead of encouraging words, the old Aumar insists that he's not worthy of the helm. And to his surprise, he gets knocked away. Simon then tries it again and again, but the helm just keeps on rejecting him. Later that night, he finally snaps and tells Edgin that he cannot do it, revealing to everyone that he and Edgin already talked about this before. Upon realizing that Edgin lied to them, Doric says she's out and Simon follows after her. Holga is also disappointed with him, but she decides to stay and says that they will wait for another moment to take Kira back. However, Edgin doesn't want to stop, pointing out that giving up is not one of their options. According to him, despite all their shortcomings, it's he who failed the most because he is the reason why he lost everything. At this moment, he reveals to them that when he arrested a Red Wizard of Thay, he stole one of their treasures because he was tired of being poor. However, it turns out that Thayans marked their treasures, so when they got it back, they killed his wife for it. Because of that, he will not stop getting Kira back, whether they help him or not. Hearing all this, Simon and Doric decide to continue on the mission as well, realizing that they are fighting for more than themselves. At this point, Holga comes up with a brilliant idea of using the staff to get into the vault during the games. By putting a portal to an artwork, they sneak it inside the carriage full of treasures that are then put inside the vault. However, the artwork accidentally falls, causing the portal to face the floor. Due to that, Doric tries to make a gap so she can shapeshift into a worm and get on the other side, while Simon and Holga make their way to the vault. At this time, Simon tries the helmet once again. But instead of being overwhelmed by his great-great-grandfather's words, he smacks him and declares that he's worthy. And to his surprise, old Aumar turns into Simon, as it's just actually a test of his self-confidence. Just then, he finally attunes the helm and opens up the vault, just in time for Holga to come around after defeating the castle guards. Unfortunately, the vault is empty and what lies there turns out to be a trap to capture them. Meanwhile, Edgin goes to Kira's room and sincerely apologizes for everything. However, the Kira in front of him is then revealed to be Sofina disguised as his daughter. Subduing Edgin, Forge shows up and tells him that this is where he dies, but he assures him that he will give Kira a beautiful and comfortable life. As it turns out, all the treasures from the vault are being transferred to a ship as Forge plans to escape the city with Kira. Doric discovers this, but she gets caught off guard and knocked out. Just then, Ejin tells Forge to put them inside the games to give them a fair chance of surviving. Hearing this, Forge declines the offer, but Sofina states that they deserve to die in the maze. With that, the group participates in the games, but they cleverly escape the stadium. Doric then takes them to Forge's ship where they wait for Forge and Kira. At this time, Forge threatens Kira's life, shocking her as she cannot believe that Forge can do it to her. Luckily, Forge does his usual monologuing, giving an opportunity to Holga to throw a potato at him so Ejin can get Kira. Then Simon uses a spell to control the seawater and steal a boat for themselves. Just then, Ejin finally gets to apologize to Kira, but as they escape, the group sees dark clouds coming from the sky, and they realize that Sofina used Forge to organize the games to turn the crowd into an undead army, just like what Sastam did in Thay. Because of that, the group returns to help the people of Neverwinter by teleporting Forge's stolen riches using the staff and spreading them through the city by a hot air balloon. This then causes the crowd to get drawn out of the stadium before Sofina's spell takes effect. Enraged at her defeat, Sofina attacks the group, and the battle between them ensues. At first, Sofina is overpowering them, but they manage to get their footing and start to turn the tides around. Because of that, Sofina uses the time stop to put an end to this, but Simon manages to nullify Sofina's spell this time. This allows Kira to use her invisibility pendant to place an anti-magic bracelet on Sofina. Without her powers, Sofina is defenseless against Doric in Ulbir form and then gets crushed by falling to Bry. However, it's not a total victory because Holga is fatally injured by a red wizard's blade, the very same thing that killed Zia. Thinking about it, Ejin decides to use the tablet to bring her back to life, accepting that his wife is truly gone and that Holga is more of a mother to Kira. And with Sofina gone, the Lord of Neverember comes back to health and awards the group the Medals of Heroism. In addition to that, he also grants the Emerald Enclave formal protection of their people and their land. Meanwhile, Sank sends Forge to Revel's End Arctic prison. The movie ends with Forge in front of the council for his trial for pardon, trying the escape tactic that Ejin and Holga did but failing miserably. Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is a great and fun adventure movie. Despite the deep lore and world building of the source material, the movie manages to put the necessary things to include without exhausting its welcome. Overall, this can easily be one of the best adventure movies of 2023.